shall cease. I am Lakeisha Ross. I'm the creative coordinator of our meetup group. So happy 2019 to everyone. So we are going to start off the year with shocking you guys, because you know we like to do that. That's what we do. So Benedict Guerrier, if you do not know who he is, he's the owner of La Rouge Lounge. He's been doing real estate since the age of 23. He's done over 100 properties, and we do this meetup free every Monday to make sure you take yourself to the next level. Whether it's new in real estate, you've been there, you've done that, and you want a little bit more money. So we have guest speakers that come out every Monday to make sure we bring a topic to you that relates to entrepreneurship and real estate. So with that being said, our guest speaker will be Aton Edwards. Topic: collaborative and cooperative economics, and he is the top world expert in disaster preparedness, self-reliance, and sustainable living since 1989. Please welcome Benedict Guerrier and Mr. Edwards.
2019, can everybody stand up? I ain't seen y'all in 2 weeks.
Happy New Year, everybody.
New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
First, I want you to turn to your neighbor and say Happy New Year. Give a handshake, give a hug.
2019.
I can't remember the last time, I can't remember the last time I was so happy to have 2 consistent weeks off. And you know, I was contemplating, I was like, this kind of feels good. Maybe I should do it once a month. But with the amount of people that was calling me on the day before New Year's, you want to have it this month, I said, hey, listen, the people are still hungry. You know, I'm truly excited at the things that we got to roll out for 2019. In about 2 months, this meetup is going to be 3 years consecutively. People can't brush their teeth consecutively. Come to a real estate meetup like this to truly get busy and this, you know, have a seat. But to me, this is a true indication of who we are and how important this meetup is, and you know how great I feel about it. You know, the diversity that's always in the room lets me know that this is a true indication of what America being great again is all about. And you know, there's a lot of money now. There's a lot of points that's going on. I know everybody's listening to this R. Kelly, and everybody's watching the playoffs. You know, there's a major distraction. There's 800,000 employees that are not getting paid because of this government shutdown. So, you know, you're like, well, if I'm not a federal employee, what does that mean to me? Just think about it. You might be rented to someone that is getting paid on a federal pay. You still got to pay your mortgage. So, you know, while everybody is consumed with what, you know, they're showing on television, please keep in mind that your business is your business to mine. And, you know, with this 2019, you've got some great things rolled out. And, you know, everybody's participation is always, I'm grateful for it. So with that being said, I chose to have Mr. Aton Edwards up here today. You know, so let the people know who you are, what you're about. You know, I know amongst all the great things that you're doing. You know, with Netflix on the Today Show.
Well, hey, first of all, again, I want to wish you all a Happy New Year. I'm very happy to be here with my friend Ben, and very proud of him with what he's been able to accomplish out here in the Rouge. We had worked together years ago and some great stuff, and I'm looking forward to it in the future. Yeah, it was a young brother, but he always had himself together, and I see with what he's been able to accomplish here, it's a great thing. But without further ado about me, yeah, I've been dealing with the space of disaster preparedness, self-reliance, and also sustainable living for many, many years. I don't even want to go back and tell you how far that really goes. It goes back in my days in college as an engineering student, and learned how to become what's called a solar guerrilla, which is before you see all of this stuff. This was practically back in the days when Jimmy Carter actually installed solar panels on the White House, and it was taken off by George Bush, and they were, you know, making jokes about it. So it's been a long thing for me. I've had a long career arc with this, and over the years, I started to branch out and do media outside of the stuff that I did with disaster preparedness, training civilians, professionals. I trained thousands of civilians. I've trained professionals in the military and law enforcement in dealing with disaster, responding to disasters, mitigating against, teaching them how to deal with pretty much every disaster from A to Z, from earthquakes and tornadoes and hurricanes to my specialty, which is the response for weapons of mass destruction and huge cataclysmic events that we'll probably talk a little bit about that tonight.
I watched you on MSNBC. I know you're always on WBLS.
Yeah.
I know when 9/11 happened, you were part of all of this. And as Americans, we kind of have a mindset, well, those are things that happen in Indonesia, or those are things that are happening in other parts of the world that's not truly affecting us. But within the last 10 years, I'm not sure if it's climate change or some other things, we started seeing the spread of wildfires. We started seeing, the flooding starting from Hurricane Katrina, and then up here we had Hurricane Sandy, and I know the Midwest gets hit with a lot of these things, and a lot of times it's what you call out of sight and out of mind. Right. I know for during President Obama's second term, one of the things that he ran on was the fact that the United States infrastructure was extremely old. And now you're seeing, if you're investing in Newark, the Newark's water system is saying it's just as bad as Flint, Michigan.
Right.
A lot of us, we're not watching these things and seeing how you're not truly affected by them. But I always talk about health before wealth. And in building these type of houses, and we talked about, when you and I first met, we had a program where we had an initiative for poor people where we were going to be putting geodesic dome homes on these vacant lots that you see in all of these urban centers and rural areas. Mm-hmm. So why or how do you feel that Americans respond to like wildfires or some of these things that are happening that we weren't seeing about 20, 30 years ago?
Well, the wildfires is one thing. It's because there are people who don't believe in global warming. They don't believe that this is happening. They think that this is, some people have called it even a hoax from China. Mm-hmm. And they've had all kinds of ideas, but the reality is we're living on a planet that is warming. There's consensus from scientists around the world agree that the planet is warming, and there are going to be different things that happen as the planet continues to warm up. The wildfires that we just saw in Los Angeles and all over the area were the result of a confluence of what you call probable events, not improbable events. And that is the utility companies in California didn't maintain a lot of the areas where they had their high power transmission lines. That's one of the things that they did not do, right? And it's also the tremendous amount of foliage that was dried because of the extremely hot and dry weather that dried up a tremendous amount of that, of the plant life and everything else, the vegetation. Some people who don't maintain maintain yards, and even not what President Trump has said about raking or anything. It's not like that. It's just a confluence of a lot of things, but the biggest thing was the global warming and the heat and the dry vegetation. So what I want to get across tonight, Ben, to your folks, is that as Americans, we have to break out of this paradigm that we are trapped in, and that is the belief of the other to come and to fix and do things. Correct. Right? The other, somebody else. This is going to happen. No, somebody's going to come and fix that. That's going to no, don't worry about it. I'm just going to watch and wait, stand here and wait, and somebody else is going to do that. We're not living in that time anymore. We have 330, almost 340 million people in this country. Correct. And there is no government that is large enough or has the resources that are available to it to hit everybody when a calamity and a disaster strikes.
Hence what's going on in Puerto Rico.
Hence, same thing, right? What happened in Florida. There's still people living in cars in Florida. Nobody's talking about that anymore. Yes. There are people that are suffering in the United States because they're expecting a response from FEMA and expecting a response from these infrastructures, that I can tell you, I went down to Washington, D.C. and sat with Director Fugate of FEMA, who told me directly that, listen, you're on MS, get out there and spread the word to Americans and let them know that we can't do it all and Americans have to do it for themselves, because that's where we're at right now. Exactly. And as we move into 2019, one of the things that I think that you guys have got to take with you is that you have to recognize that the government it's not going to work. They can't even make decisions about little things in the government, let alone the big things that are coming down the pipe. So you you, the American people, are going to have to accept the fact that we no longer have this safety net. We no longer have a reliable safety net. The country is too large, it's too complex, too many moving parts, and the politicians are inept. They can't do the jobs, most of them anyway. There's some good ones out there, but most of them, they're too busy fighting each other on points that aren't doing anything for the people right now. So what you've got to recognize is that you have to accept the responsibility for yourselves and do whatever is necessary to not only protect yourself, but as Ben had suggested, the collaborative and cooperative economics, collaborative units, working together as communities to fortify yourselves and make them more resilient and to make them more independent. Because if we stay like this, then I can guarantee you there's some disasters and some problems coming down the pike that are going to dwarf things like Katrina. There's things that we can discuss tonight. I don't know if we're going to get into it. But there's some serious stuff that's happening. We were talking about upstairs a little while ago.
Yeah, we can definitely touch on it. And people say, well, what does that have to do with real estate? If we're dumping our money into certain areas that's known on certain geographical maps that are going to get flooded, you have to know what is your exit strategy if you're not even looking at it from a philanthropic standpoint. Most people are 4 or 5 paychecks away from not being able to bounce back. That's why creating this unity that we have every Monday. And there's a range of different things and topics that I like to bring about because it's all about the collective. You know, I can't talk about, hey, you know, I'm going to be building houses and, you know, my program is based on veterans. And like you said, there's a government shutdown, certain money, because I asked you earlier, I said, well, the government shutdown, how does it affect the common person? You says, well, you know, most likely most states should have at least 1 year's worth of money to cover things. Now, these things may not be available to us. Right. So these things not being available to us, I remember sometime, I think it was last year, Greece had an, what was it, Greece? They weren't able to get a certain amount of money, and they couldn't even afford to purchase food. Now, you know, you may look in your fridge now, you may be looking in your bank account. It's not about you as the individual. Most people have a person next to them that don't necessarily have the same things that you have. So understanding where these things are going is why I decided to bring you up here. So what are some of the things that you should have in your house for you to be able to last at least a week? So everybody remembers Hurricane Sandy, right, by a show of hands. Hurricane Sandy, I remember me and the good brother in the back, we traveled almost halfway to PA to get gas. It was like, hold on. Is this a joke? Like, I gotta wake up at 6 in the morning to be able to get gas, and I'm gonna be online till 10? People have died on these gas lines because they couldn't get to gas. So it's never an issue until it is an issue. And this brother right here has spoken all over the world, and the fact that, you know, he's standing here today lets me know that, you know, our group is really growing, you know, in a way that I could never imagine. You know, people say, well, you know, they got other meetups. Listen, what we have here is bigger than just real estate and entrepreneurship. It's truly a way of life. So what are some of the things that we need in our household? Because one thing I noticed about you, ever since I met you when I was 24 and I'm 37 now, you've always walked around with like a MacGyver bag. Almost a Boy Scout on steroids.
Well, yeah, you know, one of the things, I teach a discipline. It's almost like a martial art that, well, you could say it's kind of a martial art. I call it IA, which is based on the word improvisational adaptation, because basically it's all about, life is about improvisation and adaptation to different situations, right? And so I developed this protocol that I've trained a lot of people in, and that is